Yes. So to clarify, as discussed last week at the special board meeting, I am proposing that we form a committee to be, as a result of the pending chief's retirement, which I thought was at the end of the year, and the pending expense of a police garage. And based on the fact that we have successfully formed a joint library,
Not quite yet.
well, the current library. We have made some joint DPW equipment purchases with the village. And it is simply a committee to consider what options, because I have been told that has been researched before, but I have not seen any data.
I have a stack this thick that you can look at.
That's what I've been asking for.
Just right now, not before.
Yep, last week I specifically asked for it. And I was told you told me you didn't have
I did
anything.
not have it. Chairman Clarkowski found the information.
So we got things, yes, and I became aware of a report from Chief Boys in 2009. I don't know if that's part of your packet. And although he didn't have a lot of town data in that study, I think back in 2000, there was, some research on a joint municipal activity, which is different. There are guidelines out there, there are different options to consider.
Well, here's what the town board is authorized to do regarding police departments. Establish your own department,
Right.
create a joint police department with another town, village, or city, contract with any person, including the sheriff's department for law enforcement services, or create a combined protective services department. So that's what a town board can do, one of those four.
And what I mentioned before is that there will be changes with our surrounding communities coming up here.
Could I finish, sorry?
Oh, you got that?
No.
I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Sorry. There are actually, in 2004, like I said, there's different options considered in consolidating police services. I spoke to Waterford, and they call it a joint, the police department just says Waterford, it doesn't say city or village. And they are billed for actual expenses. So there's only one chief, it's not, they are specifically asking what services they want, which dedicated officers, and they're specifically, being billed back for that. There is, here, like I said, there's different options, if it's regional, if it's in joining more than just the police and the government, if there is a cooperative agreement, if it's more functional. And this came from the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association in 2004, different recommendations. Again, I've been asking for data, there's nothing, and I think there have been requests that the full board has received emails to look into what options there are at this time. I think it would require a committee, obviously people from both the village and town at the board level, citizen volunteers, the union representation from both, obviously the chief and officers' input. It is, again, one of those matters of due diligence.
Fiscal consideration.
Exactly. Services provided, and I know in the 2009 report, the first consideration was the services provided to the citizens being at least equal or greater. And then the second thing was if there was potential for cost savings. So again, it's a matter of due diligence, based on the current events that are happening today. And I think very soon, the fire department could be requiring a fire commission based on the populations that they are servicing. And I don't know that there are any examples of a fire commission without Fire and Police Commission. So that could be in our future anyway. So again, this is just gathering facts, putting together a study and sharing that information with the community so we can make smart choices, fiscally responsible choices, for our government. It doesn't mean anyone is going to lose their job. Certainly, part of the proposal and the discussions would be our current officers would be actively continued in their employment. Obviously, they have the training and the experience. They would be part of the change and have that option at that time as well. It's nothing about anyone losing their job. It is a result of the current events in our town between the police chief and the police garage building to make sure that's the best way to spend our money.
How long do you think such a compilation of, data will take?
Obviously, it
Doesn't
would-
matter now, we're posting the police chief's position tomorrow, so.
That's kind of why I'm asking.
Well, I think it's, yeah.
One of the things I
Sorry,
said last week was just because there's a posting, doesn't mean it always 100% gets filled.
Well, doing what you do, that's for sure,
So obviously, the village has put this on their agenda for their meeting next Monday as well, to, see if they are interested in forming and participating in the committee to look at these options. And,
Whose committee, which committee?
a joint committee between the village and the town,
Okay.
so.
We didn't ask them. You went there?
At one of the meetings, we talked about it,
How about this?
and then I followed
It's
up
never
with,
been on an agenda in Franklin.
when we talked about other discussion, projects at the Tri-County meeting, I brought it up, and I think someone else did from the village, and that's when Joe said, it's been looked at before, and
It's
shut
been
it down
discussed, it's been discussed at the meeting.
at the Tri-County meeting.
Well,
So
Whether
yes,
it's on the minutes or not.
Obviously, when I couldn't get any data here, I did reach out to, the village of East Troy and the Waterford municipality to understand what they have done. I understand there are other municipalities like, Attorney Mills, that you can also, I think the town of Troy contracts with the sheriff's department.
no, they get free. Here's, are you done? I gotta make sure before I forget this. Okay, there's gonna be changes in this area coming up. And they're gonna happen with or without us, okay, but it's still our choice. Troy, right now, is below 2,500 people, okay? They get free police service because by law, for towns under 2,500, if, they don't, on their own, do a police department, the county has to do it. So the county takes care of Troy. That's gonna change somewhere in the next year or future, year, 2, 3. The village, is at 4,600 people, and when they reach 5,000, okay, they'll have to have a police commission, okay? And I didn't research that part about fire and police together. Normally, you see them together, but I don't think that's something to look up to, you know?
Well, I didn't say.
Oh, I see fire and police commissions all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that the standard? I'm not even sure.
I think
It's a city separate.
police, our fire chief, I think, was nodding his head.
Yes?
Usually they're together.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, there's a lot of moving parts to this puzzle, and it's not gonna change what we're doing now, cause even if you start this today, you're talking about a year or two. Let's go on a twist through the library agreement, and that's an easy one compared to this. Library agreement, we're in year 2, I think, thereabouts, draft number 7. And this will be much more complicated, mostly with the funding issues. So, and I did bring it up a little bit, last week. I think that Citizen Committee for Communications is a good example that worked, you know, worked fine, you know. This one here, okay, I would go ahead and get a list and say, here's the committee, okay? This board has to approve it, okay? Well, it's pretty hard unless you know these people from Adam about, this is a political issue, obviously, because you heard the speakers here before saying, don't do it, basically, or consider this, this, and this. There's a lot of emotion tied up in that by itself. You wanna get rid of your police department, you wanna create a joint one, a new one. In
It's
effect, it's a
all
new one.
about how you present.
That's true, that's true, that's true. So, that part of it becomes a little bit complicated, because in order to do a proper study, and I think the chief mentioned it too, gotta be totally, you know, independent from everybody else. They shouldn't even know where East Troy is, okay?
They're-
Other than on the map.
They're
I wouldn't
doing,
go that
they're,
far.
they're doing it right now, I was just reading, because I was trying to do some research myself, they're doing one from Glendale, Shorewood, there's like 7 different municipalities. It costs under $20,000 for this study, is what, and I'm just saying, because I know I've heard numbers of 40,000, and, you know, someone said it, and I'm like, man, and $20,000 is a lot of money, I'm not saying it's not, but
It's 35 to
it's an
45,
independent study that are.
so 40 is an average, but here's the kicker on that. If you want, first of all you need a recommendation, you're not gonna get something in black and white, but you're gonna say, this is a recommendation. But if you wanna have the detailed analysis on how you factor in, for instance, the town's 2.1 times the equalized value of the village, that's a big, big factor. Population, not that bad, 4,100, 4,600, okay? Existing budgets, there's a big difference, like $50 a person difference in the village versus, all those factors come in when you try to get this massive formula and say, this is gonna be acceptable to the village, this will be acceptable to the town or towns, okay? So that number crunching, I don't think we have anybody.
Well, maybe municipal core revenues would have to be part of that as well.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
we'll be
you
the
go to,
same
you
as
go to
the-
one court.
Yeah, you would lose a court and a clerk of court.
Right.
You're eliminating 2 positions right there.
Chief.
Yeah, and I don't know about where the revenue goes, we had a discussion on that, just so you mentioned that.
The village revenue last year for court was $71,221. Our revenue for last year was $111,940.81.
You got the budgets, the
I have both.
numbers?
Yes, these are budget
What
actual.
was the, cost for the department?
Okay, the village police department's cost is, $1,149,246. Our budget, our costs, this is for 2022, our costs are $842,227. They're almost $400,000 or $300,000 more than we are in cost, but $40,000 less in revenue.
They have more
Well, that would
cops.
all be something
Well,
that would be
Right.
considered if it's investigated.
Absolutely, so,
How does
I
that-
don't know when,
I guess I just think about, we're trying to be fiscally responsible for our town and working for the town, and how does that, by that disparity on numbers, I mean, it just seems like, how is
They
combining
spend
cities-
more and bring in less, we spend less and bring in more.
we have to write more tickets
Why
than they
would,
do.
why would you consider?
I mean, it's
that?
really what it
Seems like
comes
we're
down
They have
to.
more cops.
You're
Oh.
making assumptions.
The numbers aren't assumptions, those are real numbers.
Those are
Right.
real
Oh,
numbers.
for sure.
I mean, that's huge numbers. Can you
with
make
the
up
way-
that
It was
difference?
separate departments.
There's more
Right,
police
with the
officers
way
in a
it's
village.
structured today.
And at which point do we offer this as a referendum to both the village
Three
and
more.
the town residents? Shouldn't they have a say? I mean, we're affecting.
Absolutely,
That's why
well,
we're
this
bringing
is
it
a
up.
committee,
That would
But
be a
I
question
think
to
it
ask
should be a
first.
referendum.
to have a committee,
I mean,
Well,
it
to-
should
to
be
do
an
it.
advisory referendum or a referendum based on what the constituents want.
You guys are gonna have to vote on this,
This is,
Okay,
or table it, or who
Here's,
knows?
yeah, here's what I recommend on this, we're gonna get a lot of information in a week from tomorrow. And they may give us some good guidance, say, no, it should be a committee of community residents, or no, it should be a consultant, or neither, okay?
Keep in mind, that's only advisory.
advisory.
Because they don't have
But we're
any
kicking it down the road.
statutory authority to tell the town what to do.
Correct, but the more people we have, the more likely we'll have an answer that helps into that. And then if you go beyond that, if you're gonna do a referendum, you'd almost have to say, all right, first of all, do you want you want police department, you want a joint department? That's question one. Number two, if yes, here is how to change.
Well, if
Here's
you're gonna do
what
an
you're-
advisory referendum,
You
I
won't
include
have
all
that.
4 options the town board has by statute.
But that doesn't answer what the tax impact would be.
That's the
No, it
purpose
doesn't,
of the
but-
committee, to understand that.
So the committee won't be able to calculate that.
No.
No. Ain't gonna happen.
If you collect, like
Don't
you
you
said,
need
the
both
budget.
municipalities to agree first?
Right.
You got that?
Right. If you agree, you would need to look at the budget, the manpower, the expenses,
Well,
the assets.
I think the judge has a valid point, are we putting the cart before the horse? I mean, do we even allow the village to come back and let us know whether or not there's,
Well, they're voting on it apparently next week, right?
there,
No, they're
It's on
gonna
their
review,
agenda.
they're gonna review
It's
the
on
all.
there.
It's
It's on their agenda,
Yeah.
To have it.
so they could,
Yeah, yes, you
they
could.
could
You're gonna look
vote
at
if
Boyd's
it's on their
report.
agenda.
That was done about the same time as Boyd's, I think, I mean, because it was concurrent with that. But I would think that maybe get that input in a week and they'll tell us kind of which way to go. And then we put on our May meeting the exact same thing. I mean, you can still vote on top you want, or you can say table it to,
What do
so.
we have on the annual meeting agenda? Nothing related to this, just the garage, right?
I thought that we're gonna have discussion on this topic also because they were 2 very large.
Well, they kinda go hand in hand, I think that's
In
how
some
the police
sense,
garage
all
issue
of
led
this,
into
including-
maybe
I think one grabbed the other, kind of.
I just
But
wanted to say,
investigation or
so
discussion.
when this whole thing, when this was discussed again, I'm a big, everything should be able to be looked into, fiscally responsible and all that. One thing, because obviously there's a lot to think about, and one I didn't think about, there was some concerns brought to some members of our department that, you know, we're gonna get rid of our police department and everyone's gonna lose their job. And I know Clay had said something in public comments, that's the way it goes. What I'm hearing from Michelle is I think there are more options.
That never crossed my
And
mind.
when it was discussed at that last meeting, it was also said out of almost every, mine was my mouth, and I think Michelle, I think even Pete might have said, it's nothing, it may not change at all. You know, nobody's looking at getting rid of anybody. As far as our police department, I back the badge, I just wanna let you know that, John, and make sure that, you know, being a leader back there, that you can let everybody else on the department. By no means am I looking at, I was ever thinking or crossing my mind for anybody getting fired.
Yeah, I
Or
agree.
anybody, you know what I'm saying, I guess, and that's my fault for not thinking that through, because all I'm trying to do is, 50 things at once, as we all do. I apologize for that.
But by doing this, we're creating an element of uncertainty for those guys, and that's why
Well,
they feel like they do.
100.
And the fact that if we, and
It's a week.
if we're petitioning for a
All the
police chief
contracts
at this
end.
time.
Go ahead, Peter.
that if we're petitioning for a police chief at this time, and he gets wind of the fact that consolidation is in the air, it may deter any potential candidate for police chief, because they feel like, I'm just walking into uncertainty, and there's no assurance of I'm gonna have a job of any longevity. That's a concern in going in that direction.
that would be, in my opinion, speculation.
Yes, it is.
And that's what I wanted to bring up, is everybody, in the community, people from certain parts of the community, they're speculating, and everyone's speculating, and I know that certain, people within the township, they keep, they don't know, they're just speculating. Well, it's kind of the same concept, that's going, and I just hope everyone, none of this was made to be, let's make everybody angry, we're gonna go ahead and do this and strong arm this through. That's not the case. I don't think anybody here has ever said that's the case. Some people have obviously bigger opinions on things. I personally don't know that the money would be there to make it fiscally responsible anyway, but I just don't want people to assume. It's really starting to get frustrating, and it goes both directions, people assuming and not knowing, but I just wanted to make sure the police department knows that I think, pretty sure everybody on this board has their back and will continue to, and please don't take offense when we have to look into things. We just don't want you guys to get discouraged. I can understand once I had that conversation why, but I wanna make it publicly known that is not the intention. At least my intention, and I don't think anybody's intention here.
Absolutely, and like I said, it never crossed my mind, so thank you for bringing that to our attention, so that we can address it immediately. Again, in my mind, it is simply a matter of due diligence and my obligation to the electors and the community to speak with data, not just assume that none of the options will work. Because when I asked for data, I didn't, I got some notes that said we don't wanna do it.
Right?
I dug it out,
They said they're
I
coming
think,
forward.
Ted back there, he asked for that, and I brought it up in the basement.
Friday? I think it was Friday.
That was Friday. Yeah, it was.
So
So
it's
that's
more
there.
than this.
More than that, yeah, these are, that's additional one, that one Clay did in 2009. And the one I gave you guys is one that Chief Surges did, mostly on his own, 2 years before he retired. And he did a detailed one, and I hope I gave it to everybody. So what I'll do is I'll
I'd like
rescan
copies
it.
of something.
All of it,
Right.
I quite a bit on that already.
all of it.
I wanna make
There
sure. we have it
there
all.
were a couple options.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first time this was ever studied, believe it or
There
not,
wasn't no options.
Pete's dad was on the committee. All right?
Uh-oh.
This was Jim Burris, or I'm forgetting the other guy before him, said, we need a committee to determine how it can improve the policing in the town of East Troy. 4 or 5 guys, and Henry Bill, Roman, was on there too. And they came back and said, well, you're gonna have 4 officers of 2, that's pretty easy. So then when that answer came back, they formed another committee to investigate joint with the village. I mean, this was probably 1965, so that data is obviously inert,
Right.
you know. Clay's not, and yet, even though that's 11 years or 12, 13 years. I do think if you're trying to get better data, you need an expert to give you data rather than guesses. Because we can all guess. Matter of fact, we could probably sit here tonight and come up with some rough numbers that mean absolutely nothing, you know, because we were done.
But ultimately, it's all about money, and it's gotta be significant enough in order to do something.
What exactly, Michelle, I'm trying to figure out, if we're to the point where a motion is being considered,
To create a committee to
do
reach.
you know who's appointed to the committee? Is there a certain number of representatives from the village that are gonna be on it, or?
So I would say at a minimum, we would have a board member from both the village and the town, at least one citizen member, if not more, from both the village and the town. I don't know if they would be full-time committee, but obviously we would need input from both unions, and the police chief or officer from both communities. So at least a minimum of 8 people on the committee.
I think the motion should be more specific than just the town approves formation of a police committee. I think you need some details like
Yeah.
who's on the committee.
And Kim, did we get to what is actually on the agenda for the annual meeting?
Just police garage, right?
It's totally the garage, not even.
But the public comment is gonna be tied to that same issue of consolidation.
I thought we had all of that on.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be, well, that's what came up, you know, a factor. It is a factor, you know? So I
Oh,
think,
it's all a factor,
yeah,
for sure.
and again, either way, that will fall under advice, and I do think we're gonna get some advice.
Maybe this seems, the idea of, making a motion to, form a committee at this time should be just tabled for later, when I'm gone, for one.
Oh, and, there's Bill, keep your ears open.
Well, that was discussed by all of this because of, you know, the possibility of a different, you know, of the
Yeah,
newer
that's fine,
members
I
on the
get it.
board, but that was already said, that it'd be nice to wait on all of this. until-
Well, I kinda like to know what the village is gonna do next week too. I mean, if they
Who
have
makes
an
the
interest
first
or
move?
not.
Well,
You ain't doing it.
In speaking to
Yeah.
the village president, or village chairperson, yes, he does, and the police chief, they have.
Okay.
you gotta be careful, with that. maybe Jim can fill you in on that.
Why wouldn't they be?
You can go speak to anybody you
Yeah.
want,
And we
anywhere,
reduce her-
but nobody here can speak on behalf of the board unless the board authorizes. it.
Right,
You know,
Yeah.
I don't think.
I was
we-
just- I was just looking for data, yeah.
All right, well,
So,
you have it on here, I
Yep,
mean, there's
I-
two choices, one, go with that, or two, table it to next month. That's-
Or three, not do it.
Or three, not do it.
I guess I will make a motion that we authorize the formation of a committee to research the police service options between the town and the village, dependent on village's vote next week.
Do we have any second?
I'll second it. I think it needs to be looked into anyway, whether you do it or not.
All right, we have a motion second, any further discussion? Only thing I'll add on that is this is premature to,
I think,
you should go next month, because then we'll know more.
I think
Month ain't gonna make a difference.
I'd like to hear what the village has to say, personally. I'd like to hear the annual meeting.
And I guess at the annual meeting, yeah,
This
I was
is-
looking forward
That's
to
8 days away. so-
identifying potential volunteers.
Well, that
Because,
can always be thrown out there like it did last time. All right, since I think we're gonna have a split here, we do a roll call vote on the motion to do that committee now, Clarkowski, no.
Church, no.
Reyes, yes, aye.
Justin Holm, nay.
Wales, I.
Okay, if you want to, anytime you can tell Kim to this show on, I think you should, because we'll know a heck of a lot more. So, okay,
We'll throw it on
next month.
next month, not the annual meeting.
No, you can't, the annual meeting,
Alright.
agenda set. Okay,
And this could come up whenever there's more information out there. You can vote on it multiple times.
Right.
all right, donation to Walworth County Clean Sweep Program, we donated last year because, we thought it was the right thing to do, you know. The county funds the Clean Sweep Program in its entirety, but they do get some state funds. It doesn't cover the cost. And there's one reason why Walworth County is debt free. They look for every opportunity to get the revenue, and this is one where they ask every municipality in the county, would you like to donate? Last year, we donated 100, 200, what did we? 200. So this is just strictly a board decision here on good, bad, indifferent. I think it sets a good president, he's opposite, you know. And if you look at what they got posted, they now have, oh my, I think there's at least, I mean, they have electronics, but they also have, and we have electronics, but they also have, I think, 3 clean sweeps a year now. And it might be in Whitewater or in Mukwonago or, you know, close by, but they have more options for that. So, and we did it last year, unless there's a reason to think that we shouldn't do it. This falls under the, it says donation, so it's strictly discretionary.
Are we allowed to do this, Jim?
I haven't
The
looked
last
into
time,
it.
I got,
Before,
okay.
for years.
The fire department gave a donation and I got my hands up, so I'm just asking.
Well, we did it for the cemeteries and, obviously there's a reason there, because if we don't help them and they go belly up.
But the town board is voting on gifting using town taxpayer money.
Not to an individual.
That's what the issue is, that you probably got your hands slapped for.
Okay.
All right, so do you have a recommendation on this, or do you think you wanna check this out?
I think I would wanna look into it a little more. I mean,
Done it the last 3 years.
I know, but I've never gotten authorization to look into anything, it's only $200
We're gonna pay
bucks.
him $150 to donate $200.
Well, then my advice would be don't do it.
That's a pretty easy answer.
That was a good idea.
If it's an individual person, it's pretty clear, you can't do it. If you give it to an organization that's known to be okay, this here is another government agency. How does that affect it? Walworth County, does that make it better or worse?
Couldn't tell you.
out as an invoice for the clean sweep program?
There's a donation form that they've
Well,
already sent
they
us.
don't tell us how much.
How
I make
come
a
we
motion that the town of East Troy donate $200 to the Walworth County Clean Sweep Program. We did it last year.
Okay, you had a motion to do that?
Good cause.
All right, do we have a
We're also
second?
gonna take your rat poison and your paint and your cleaning chemicals and
All that stuff.
All the stuff that doesn't belong in the soil.
Yeah, we don't wanna go anywhere else. Okay, do we have a second to that? Barb made a note.
I'll second.
Pete did a second. There's further discussion?
Yeah, if Attorney Mills was saying then not to do it, and I understand what the question and it isn't, and I'm totally about it. And I know we did it last year, but
it's a
And
free
the year
event.
before, and the
It's
year
a free
before.
event to our residents, so any resident in the town can take their hazardous waste chemicals to the clean sweep for free. $200 is not,
I think you might be missing my point.
That's-
I'm not
Yeah, I
saying
wanna-
it's a good
just because we've done it
cause.
doesn't make it right, but which I'm about it. I think it's a great idea, but when Attorney Mills, is saying that no,
Well, he's saying if you don't research it, you'd
He's
recommend
not
no.
gonna
I can't
That's
give
his
a
job.
legal opinion if I don't research it,
Right.
is what I'm saying.
Uh,
3 years in running, we've been okay.
And what do we want to research?
whether this-
you just wanna look in that if we're
Can
using
taxpayer
taxpayers'
dollars be gifted to a governmental agency?
the town of Darien used to fund this completely from their landfill funds. So the town of Darien did it for years, backed away from it a little bit, because their tipping fees from the landfill go to the county. So that's when Walworth County asked all the municipalities if they would be willing to pitch in. So the town of Darien did it for many years and paid for the entire event
As a
completely.
donation?
Yes, as a donation
All
for
right.
the town of Darien.
My discussion point will then be, this, question for this
You know what,
issue is
why
a
don't you just
single
call
issue.
Towns Association then? Get an opinion from them.
We have a motion and a second.
All right, there's a motion and a second, but it should be amended to me researching that with the town association for that legality issue. Should be subject to that.
Pending approval from the Wisconsin Towns Association.
You second that then?
Okay, I second that one.
Okay. And again, it's subject to me getting a written response from them. I'm sure you
You
got.
might not get a written response.
I'm pretty good at getting written response.
Email
Okay.
response? That's great.
Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, on motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. All right, attorney's report.
First item